Good morning or afternoon, depending on your time zone. Welcome to Training Bytes, a digestible approach to counterpoint training. Today we're going to talk about counterpoint reports. If you have any questions during the presentation, there is a Q&A icon on your Teams toolbar at the top, so enter in your questions there. If you don't see a Q&A icon, go to the chat. Stick around. I'll answer all your questions, and Marty will help. We'll answer all your questions at the end of the session. My name is Gina Thomas. I'm the training manager here at C&K Systems. And joining me today is Marty Katz. He's a project lead here at C&K Systems. Good afternoon, Marty.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So when it comes to reporting, anyone that's used Counterpoint knows there's lots of reports and they're everywhere. And I always tell people my go-to reports, 90% of what I need, I can either find in a sales analysis or a merchandise analysis report. So now you know that, but what's the difference? I also get a lot of requests to see the value of the inventory in the past and for today. So what reports should you run to see your current on hands and your on hands in the past? Now, a lot of times when you go to run a report, you may use drop downs, you may populate filters, and maybe you find yourself using the same drop down and the same filters over and over. So instead of defining the filters and the drop downs, from scratch every single time you want that report, on any report, you can actually save whatever you created and recall it later. And I'll show you how to do that. And then often when I'm teaching somebody how to run a sales report, they'll want to see on hand on a sales report. Sales reports will never show on hand. So what kind of report would I run if I wanted to see sales and on hand? Or maybe on hand sales, on purchase orders, on receivings, on transfers. In other words, multiple data types. And that's a data type. Any transaction's a data type, and your inventory records are considered data types. So that's what we're talking about today. Sales analysis by group, my favorite sales report. Merchandise analysis, my favorite report for analyzing multiple data types. I'll show you how to create and save reports and how to recall them. And then I'll show you a couple of other helpful reports that I like the inventory valuation report and the inventory history report, which is a terrific auditing tool. So let's talk about sales analysis and merchandise analysis first. Again, my go-to reports, but what's the difference? Sales analysis reports only report on sales. Sales by item, sales by vendor, sales by day. And a feature of sales analysis is you're going to have up to 3 comparative date ranges. On the other hand, a merchandise analysis report, you can include multiple data types on one report, like sold, on hand, on purchase order, received. You can also include all locations in the report, and there's something called KPIs available for selection, which is fancy for key product indicators. In both of these reports and the flash sales report, you as the end user get to select quantitative columns that you want to appear on the report. So things like cost, quantity, price, discounts, you can select those types of values. Now, some limitations between sales analysis and merchandise analysis. A limitation of any sales analysis report is you can't group it. You can't group it by vendor or by category. And I get this request a lot. I want to see my item sales, but I want to see them grouped by category or grouped by vendor. Sales analysis reports don't have any KPIs. That's like gross margin, return on investment, sell through, weeks on hand, turn. And if you have more than one store, A limitation of sales analysis is you can only run the report for one store at a time, or if you do want to run it for all stores, it combines all the sales figures, so it doesn't break them out. Now, a limitation in merchandise analysis, there's no comparative dates. You get one date range, that's it. And the reports are limited to merchandise-related information. Again, on hand, sales, purchasing, receiving, transfers, adjustments. So there's nothing customer related. Any report in Counterpoint can be customized in Crystal, except any sales analysis, merchandise analysis, flash sales cannot be customized. When you go to sales analysis by group, which is in sales history, reports, sales analysis by group, this is what the screen looks like. And if you look to the top where it says group by, this drop down has tons and tons of pre-made reports, and then you can select the quantitative columns that you want on those pre-made reports. Then once you've made the report, included what you wanted on it. Now remember, there's no descriptive values. You can't add, if you do an item report and say, well, I'd like to see the category or I'd like to see the vendor, that's not an available column to select. It has to be money or number related. When you're done designing, you'll go to options, you'll save parameters, you'll give your saved report a name, and then when you want to run it again, you can go back to options, load parameters, and you'll find your report and be able to run it. And you can do that for any report. Now in merchandise analysis, which is under inventory reports, merchandise analysis, you can run a summarized report or a very granular detailed report by simply using the drop down at the upper left to analyze either by group or by item. Again, you're going to have an opportunity to select columns and select quantitative values. You can also save and recall the parameters. Then some of the other reports I'm going to show you today. Historical valuation, and this is under inventory reports. Historical valuation is so you can look at your inventory values in the past. Today is May the 7th. I want to know what my inventory was worth as of December 31st. That's your report. The valuation report is what are my on hands right now, today, this moment in time. And the inventory history report is your audit report. How did that item get to be a quantity of 20 when I see 50 on the floor? Let me run the history report and see every transaction that has affected that item's quantity or cost. All right, let's jump into the new software, the new release. So I'm going to start with sales analysis by group. I'm going to go to sales history, reports, sales analysis by group. And this is the default that you see when you open up this screen. So now you got to start making some decisions. How big do I want the report? Traditional is 5 columns, meaning you can pick 5 quantitative columns. Then you have wide 7, 10, and 11. I usually stick to 7 because it, if you pick too many columns, sometimes you pick that 9th and 10th column and it makes it too big to really produce a linear report. The report will wrap, and I find those a little difficult to read when they're wrapping. So I usually stick to 7 columns. This group by is where all the pre-made reports are that you can modify. Now, when I do choose a report from this dropdown, I typically stick with the reports that start ticket history line or ticket history. So what's the difference? Picture a receipt. A receipt has a header and a footer. The header has, the date, the cashier, the time. Footer has tax totals. So anything that says ticket history is typically going to deal with the header footer information from the receipt. Now again, thinking of a receipt, In the body of a receipt, you have merchandise, whatever you're selling. So ticket history line reports tend to deal with merchandise. I'm going to pick the item number, ticket history line item number, because I want to see my sales by item. The default is to print the top 10, but you can have any number you want here. You could also choose bottom, and again, you can have any number here. The default is 10, but you can change it. I'm going to set mine to all because I want to see everything. The print and order by. Notice it defaulted to item number, meaning print all my sales by item in item number order. I would rather see my report print in a manner where the item that I collected the most dollars on pulls to the top, or the item that I sold the most quantity pulls to the top. Those are the two choices I usually make. And these are the values I like to use. So quantity sold. So I don't need any of these other ones. I want quantity. This is true quantity sold, even after returns. How many did I sell in this date range? And then look at all these sales values. I always choose this one that just simply says sales. That means sales after discounts, before taxes, what you actually took to the bank. I'm going to rank this one by sales. Then you have your 3 date ranges. You can have up to 3. They can be any date. You don't have to take the default. You could do yesterday, the day before, and the day before if you like. And when I select dates, I typically don't just come in here and type in a date. Ultimately, I want to save this report. So when I pick dates, I usually pick them from this dynamic date dropdown, meaning if I pick something like quarter to date, if I come to run this report tomorrow, it'll automatically run from 4/1 to 5/8. And then you have these values that seem to be duplicated. We've got year to date and year to date company. If your calendar year is from January to December, these two do the same thing. They do the exact same thing. Now, if you have a fiscal calendar defined in Counterpoint, let's say your fiscal year runs from May to April, then year-to-date company or any value that says company is going to look at your fiscal calendar. I'm just going to choose year-to-date. Down here at the bottom, I can only select one store, but if I have more than one store, I can click on all stores. But again, I have 2 stores. All my sales will be combined at the item level. So I'm just going to run mine for the main today. Now, in merchandise analysis, sales analysis by group, flash sales, they all have this tab called select columns that you don't see on any other report in Counterpoint. So if I go to select columns, these are the available columns, and you'll notice there's nothing descriptive in here. These are all money or numbers. Now by default, Counterpoint did select sales, which are net sales after discounts before taxes. And if you look down here, I can see I have 5 out of 7 columns selected. If I don't want a column, all I have to do is either click on it and click on an arrow, or I can double click on it, either one. What I want in this report is I want to know cost. How much did it cost me to sell these items? And this is average cost, by the way, not last cost. You know, I have this value down here called sales price 1. What is that? Well, that means what it rang up as. So a lot of people like to see that, particularly for giving a lot of discounts. So here's what I would do. I would say sales price 1. I'd move it up. And then I would get the value called discounts from price 1. And I'd move that up. So sales price 1 is going to represent what the item rang up for originally, any discounts given to that item, and then what you actually sold it for under the sales column. Now, the discounts don't tell you where the discounts came from. It just gives you an amount. So it could be any discount, whether it's from a price rule, a price override, or even a discount code. Then over here on the right, dollar rounding. I personally, if I sold $26.35 worth of merchandise, I want to see the 35 cents, but that's just me. For those of you that don't want to see that, then go ahead and dollar round, and then you would just see $25 instead of 25.35. It also takes up less real estate when you round. I'm going to uncheck that. Quantity rounding, if you sell a portion of a whole, I buy coffee by the pound, but I sell it by the ounce, so my on hand is always in a fraction, 1.25, 2.50, whatever the case. Quantity rounding is going to round that value, or that value sold. So if you don't sell a portion of a whole, you can just leave it checked. If you do sell that way, I would uncheck that. Okay, this is a filter, this is a filter, this is a filter. So I want to see everything. So I'm not putting anything in the filter. I want to see all my item sales ranked by dollars collected, year to date at the main. So now I'll just go ahead and preview that. And here you go. There's my item. There's a description. This is the full price selling. This is what the discounts that were applied. This is what I actually collected. And here's what it cost. And then what's nice about these reports, in the 7 wide and the 10 wide and the traditional, is you have something called percent to total. This percent to total is, I'm going to come to this one where we actually had sales. Out of all the dollars I collected, I can attribute 42% of those dollars to this item. I'm going to go back and show you where that is. So it's show percent to totals is this switch. This is not available in an 11 wide report. So if you choose an 11 wide report, it grays out. So I'm just going to change it back to 7. So I like that report, and I don't want to have to do all this clicking every time I want to see this information. So I'm going to save this report. And again, this applies to any report anywhere in Counterpoint. Options, save parameters. I'm just going to give it a name, item sales. And then I'm just going to go ahead and give it a description as well. It just makes it look prettier when you go to load the parameter. You don't have to. All right, now I'm going to close out of here and show you what happens. So had I not saved anything, and then I came in the next day or 2 minutes later, and I clicked on this, sales analysis by group, it just goes back to the default. But because I saved it, I don't have to visit all these drop downs, date fields, or anything. Options, load parameters. There's my item sales. So this is why I put something in the description so I can see it here. Otherwise, you just got to train yourself to look over here and load. And so everything's set. I have my report. It's ranking by sales. But this time when I run the report, and I just want this to be temporary, I always want it to print an order by sales, but just for this one time, I want the item that sold the most to pull to the top. And you can do that. So I preview it. I find out it's my Cal X12, which is also what I collected the most dollars on, but I sold the most units, even though I didn't put a quantity on this report. Silliness. But it is the one that sold the most units. The next time I reload that report, if I don't resave it, with the rank by or a print and order by quantity sold, it's going to revert back to the way it was. So options, load parameters, item sales, and so now it'll just rank by sales again. Now I like this report, except it doesn't have a quantity on it. And I really do want a top 15 or bottom 15 report. So I'm going to go over to select columns, and I'm going to put quantity sold on this. And it's just this value here, quantity sold. I'm going to move that up. Okay. Now I'm going to save it, but I'm not going to save it as an item sales report. Oh, I forgot one thing. I need to come here and say, you know what? I want the top 15. So the top 15 in sales. So now I can save it as a completely separate report. I'm going to go to options, save parameters. Now, it's going to look like I'm overwriting my item sales report, but don't be afraid, you're not. I'm just going to call this top 15. And then if I don't feel like typing the description, I can just copy and paste and then save. So now when I want to run my top 15, sales analysis by group, options, load parameters, top 15, load, and preview. And there's my top 15. If you're trying to run a report and you're having problems, or you're not sure how to make the report return the information that you want, please log a support ticket. You can even request me, but log a support ticket. We're happy to help you out. Okay, let's move on to merchandise analysis. So merchandise analysis, remember, I'm not restricted to just sales. In sales analysis, that's all there is, it's sales. Merchandise analysis, I can have sales and on hand. I can have sales on hand on purchase order, sales on hand on purchase order receiving, whatever I like. So that's under inventory, reports, merchandise analysis. So my first decision is, do I want a summarized report or do I want something, that's very granular? So your only two choices here are group and item. Group is summarized, item is not. I'm going to print all, but again, if you want to do a top or bottom, it can be any number. And then I can group by. I can't do this in sales analysis. I can't run an item report and say group it by category, but I can do it here. So that's kind of a feature of the merchandise analysis. So I'm going to group it by category, and then I can rank it, print in order by, let's say, quantity sold. And down here is where I would select my dynamic date. Over on the right, all locations, because I have more than one store. Or if I just want a specific one, I can select a specific location, or even a grouping if you have your stores grouped up, like by region or district. If I do want to see all locations, I'll probably want to check show location detail. That way it'll break out and not combine my figures. I'll see my sales and on hand for my main, and I'll see my sales and on hand for my east. And then this little switch here, it doesn't mean include items you've marked as inactive under the status on the item record. It's kind of a misleading statement. If you build a new item and you put it on a purchasing document and you run this report and you have not received that item, but you run this report and you build this report for on orders or on purchase order, this has to be checked for those items to show up. Counterpoint doesn't consider an item active until it's been received or adjusted or sold. I had a customer teach me that once. And then you have your dollar rounding, you have your quantity rounding. Now, select columns. I get to select what I want. Notice how big my scroll bar is. There's more here than it appears by default. And I wish I could change that so you'd see everything by default, but I can't. So if you look down here, there's a little switch called Show All Columns. Watch what happens to this scroll bar. See, now I've got lots of stuff here. So I want sales and on hand. So I'm going to go over here to the right to the visible columns. And I'm also going to note I have 10 columns. I usually stick to maybe 7 or 8 columns. So I'm going to get rid of everything except these. So I want to see my sales and my cost, how many I sold, but then I want to see my current on hand. So if I select quantity on hand, and this is going to be true in almost any report in Counterpoint, if you see a value called quantity on hand, it means right now at this very moment in time. In other words, this value does not pay attention to this date range. Does not. The sales do, but not the on hand. The other value that you can select that does not pay attention to the date range is quantity on purchase order. This value does not care about this date range. It will just show you quantities on order. for any open or partially received against PO. So I always tell people, I always kind of preach, keep your PO module clean, because if you have an old PO from 5 years ago that you didn't cancel for whatever reason, that, was either never received against or partially received against, those items are going to show up on this report. So keep your PO module clean. All right, so I want sales and on hand. And the other thing I want to say about my on hand is the value of my on hand. So I'm just going to find cost on hand. Okay, and again, that's average cost, not last cost. This is a filter. This is a filter. So if I leave the filter blank, show me item on hand and sales year to date for all my stores, but break out the locations. So I'm going to preview it. And so you can see, here is my item. Here's a description. Here's the location, the sales at that location. And this again, net sales, the cost of the sales, how many were sold, current on hand. If you have a negative on hand, you're going to have a negative cost on hand. And of course it's grouped, my apparel, food, golf. And if I go to the last page, I get all my totals. So I like this report. I think I'll save it. So I'm going to go to Options, Save Parameters. I'm just going to call it Sold on Hand. And, oh, I lost it. Let me close out of that. Try that again. Options, Save Parameters. I'm going to call it Options, Save Parameters. Sold on hand. And you can also copy, just highlight, right click, copy, come down to description, Control V, or right click and paste. Okay, so now I can call up that report anytime I want to run it without clicking on everything that I originally clicked on. So if I go back to merchandise analysis, options, load parameters, here's my sold and on hand, and everything is set. Now, I like this report, but my golf category drives a lot of sales. So I want this report, but I only want it to focus on golf. So I'm going to go to the item tab and I'm going to choose my golf category. And now I'm going to save it as a separate report. So I'm going to go to Options, Save Parameters. And again, it looks like I'm overwriting the one I just saved, but I'm just going to call this Sold on Hand Golf. And Sold on Hand Golf. And save. So now when I go to Options and Load Parameters, I have my Sold and on hand and my Sold on Hand Golf. And again, if you ever need any help with this type of report, log a support ticket. All right, flash sales. Flash sales is another report that you can design. You can pick your own quantitative columns. I like the flash sales. It's brief, it's brilliant. It will break out my stores. So I'm going to go to Sales History, Reports, Flash Sales. Just specify a date, pick your store, but here you can go to Select Columns, and you can select the columns that you like. And then when I preview, there's my nice flash sales report. Oh, let me do all stores. Let me go here and all stores, and it breaks them out very nicely. Okay, let's talk about valuation reports. Historical in the past and valuation today. So I'm going to go to Inventory, Reports, Historical Valuation. History is kind of in that word, gives you kind of a clue. My only decisions I can make here is whether I want a summary report or a very detailed report. I can pick my top, bottom, or all. I can group it, which is nice. And then I can rank it however I like, quantity, cost. Again, it's valuation, it's not sales. Notice there's no date range. So I had somebody say to me one day, I want to see my on hands from December 25th to December 31st. You can only have one date. So I'm just going to say, I want to see my on hands as of the beginning of the month. And again, I can do all locations. I can show the location details so all the numbers aren't combined. I have dollar rounding, quantity rounding, but there's no select columns tab. There's a filter. There's two filters, so I can filter for groupings, but I'm going to look at everything. So I'm going to preview. So you can see here, here's my item, here's the description, the location, the quantity at that location, the price. I'm sorry, there's the category, the quantity's right there. Here's the price, here's the cost, and here's the retail value, which in most cases is probably going to match your price one. And if I go to the last page, there's my totals. And of course, with any report anywhere in Counterpoint view, you can always export it. You can export it to any of these formats as long as you own the format. You know, like if you want to export to Excel, you need to have Excel installed. And then you can send it to, you know, the actual application itself, Excel, Word, PDF, or you can just save it locally on your C drive on your desktop. So that's the value of your inventory in the past. Then we have valuation. What's the value of my inventory right now at this moment in time? That's the valuation right here. And notice there's not a lot of choices here. I can either do a detail or a summary. That's it. I can change the order by. I can't select any columns. I can filter. And by default, the valuation report is not going to display any items that are equal to 0. So I'm going to preview. So here we go. This is the summarized version of this report. It shows me the item number, the category, the description. There's a subcategory, the quantity on hand. Oh, that's a 0. Average cost, last cost, and retail. Now, I'm going to show you the detailed version. And so I'm going to say detail. Okay, and so this will break out, you know, if you're multi-store, the detailed report will give you both stores. That summary report combines all the figures between both stores unless you filter. So you can see here at my East, there's my quantity on hand, my price, average unit cost, last cost, and then extended values. So that's value at this moment in time. A very common question I get, and this report does not exist in Counterpoint, but it is a very common question. I want to see what items were purchased with Visa. That report does not exist in Counterpoint or any other software I've worked with, and mainly because of split tenders. You know, if you have multiple items on a ticket and somebody pays with cash and a credit card, how can the software determine which items belong to Visa and which items belong to cash? But I can get you a pay code report, which will show you how much money you collected for each pay code, and you can filter for a pay code, which you can't do anywhere except this report. So I'm going to go to sales history, reports, management history, and then there's a few reports here in this drop down. I'm going to pick the pay code history. I'm going to put in my date range. I can have a comparative date if I like. I can run it summary or detail. I'll show you both versions. So we'll run it summary first. And it's very summarized. You know, here for AR charges, I'm pretty slow. All year you've only rung 2 AR charges, and then how much you collected. Now the detailed version will show you posting level, document counts, and amounts. So it doesn't say on this day it was at and on that day it was at. It's like when you posted, so that's the detail. So I don't post daily. You might post daily. So you might see like in your cache, you know, consecutive days. I skip around a lot because I don't post every day. But When I posted on the 13th, there were 2 documents that were paid with cash. And that's what this means. So it's not quite, what items were bought with Visa, but you can see how much money you collected for each tender. A lot of times I'll get a call and somebody will say, I don't understand why this on-hand value or this cost is this value. How did it get here? So I'll give you an example. I'm going to go to inventory and items with my nice little graphic. I'm going to find an item. Now remember these quantity on-hand quantity available for those of you that have more than one store. This is a company value. If you want to see what is at each store, you need to zoom in on it, and then you can see the quantities at each one of my locations. So I might see that, at my main, I have 14 as far as what Counterpoint thinks I have, because Counterpoint only does what we tell it to do. I have 14, but physically I see 20. So I want to see every transaction that affected this to get it to 14, and why don't I have 20? The answer is probably because you didn't receive it or adjust it, but that's another story. But anyways, I want to see every transaction that affected that item. So I'm going to start an inventory, go to reports, and it's called Inventory History Report. I would focus on one item at a time, otherwise the report's going to be very overwhelming. And if you have questions about multiple items, just figure out what's wrong with one of them. And then chances are that's what's wrong with the rest of them, like people didn't do their receiving. So the way I like to arrange this report is by transaction date and type. So it goes in date order. And I don't run it summary because then I don't see all the transactions. So I definitely enable detail. And then I come here to inventory history. And again, just look at one item at a time. Otherwise, it's just so confusing to read. If I'm multi-store and I know that it's just my main that I'm having this question about, then I can filter for the location, but I'm going to let you see all locations because I'm just that giving. So you could see here at my east, there was a physical count done. Now, this quantity is greatly misinterpreted. A lot of people think that's what was counted that day, and it's not. It was the difference between the create and what was counted. So in other words, it's the variance that needed to be adjusted. So for example, here it got an upward adjustment of 5. So maybe my create saw 15, but I actually counted 20. And so that variance is 5. So Counterpoint adjusted the quantity according to that variance. Anything that doesn't have a minus sign in front of it is adding to the inventory. Anything with a minus sign is taking away from the inventory. And you even have a cost column here. So you can see all the cost. All right, so that's inventory history, solving mysteries about quantity and cost. A lot of times I get a request like this. I would like to have a report that shows me customer emails. What report do I run? Well, sometimes it's not always a report. A lot of people don't realize that you can actually create an informational report through a lookup, and you have a lot more control over it than you do in any other report in Counterpoint. Now, your lookups are not going to do any calculations, but for something like a list of my inventory or a list of my customers and their email, lookups are perfect for this. So I'm just going to go to customers, and I'm going to go to customers, and I'm just going to go to a lookup here. I already created one from this morning's session. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Goodbye. Okay. By default, when you go into a customer lookup, if you use this drop down, there is a lookup that came with your install called email one. So if I click on it, you can see It's showing me all my customers, whether they have an email or not. And if I preview or print, it's going to give me a report. And then I'm going to get this report that's really not very helpful because I only want to see customers with an email address. And matter of fact, I don't need the customer number there, but I think I might want their phone number as well. So I want to design this report or this lookup. I don't need the customer number. So I'm going to go to my column designer, right click column designer. I'm going to get rid of customer number and maybe I want to see their phone number. So I'll just come down here and find phone and I'll just put it under their name. Now I want to refine this lookup so I'm only looking at customers that have an email address. I'm going to come up here to filter. I'm going to need to modify the filter. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to customize. Click here to add a condition. Don't keep clicking until email pops up. Just click on the condition in red. I'm going to type in E for email. And I'm going to say email is not empty. I'm going to simplify this. And then I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. So now all I have is a list of customers that actually have emails. And I can see the phone numbers for the ones I created phone numbers for. Now, I could do that filter and customize that filter every time I want this list, but why? So if you like what you see and you preview it and say, this is a lookup I'm going to probably use more than once a year, why not save it? So if you want to save a lookup, you're going to go to Options, Save As, and just give it a name, email and phone. So now that lookup that you saved will forever be in here. I'm going to start from scratch. So usually when you go into a lookup, you're looking at this, you're looking at the default, but you can actually use this drop down and find the lookup that you just created. There it is, and preview or print. That same concept is good in your items as well. I just want a list of items that are over $100. You could, design your lookup, filter for items over $100, and save that lookup. Another common request I get is I want to send a postcard to all my customers that spent at least $100 in the last month. So there's a way to do that. It's not a report. It's actually a label, but it still gives you good information. So I'm going to go to System, Labels. I'm going to go to the Label Job Lookup. And if you look through here, most of these really are labels. Look at customer labels, address labels, user labels, vendor labels. But this very top one here, it's address customer sales history. So it's going to make a customer address label, but only for customers that spend a certain amount of money. So I'm just going to click OK. And then I get this nice little filter down here. I don't want to see my cash customer in here, my walk-in customer. So I will customize the filter so the customer is not cash. I'm going to simplify it. So I'm going to say, I don't want to see my cash customers. Oh, look, it's showing my email. I'll go back to the default, and I'll just find cash. Here's my cash customer. I don't need to see that. And I just want to see a label for every one of my customers that spent more than $100. So I'm going to preview. And you can see here, Brian spent more than 100, Carol spent more than 100, so did Bill Baker, and so did my cash customer that didn't get excluded. This is what I like about my job. Hey, watch this. Okay. So that's kind of the highlight on the reports. Again, my go-to is sales analysis and merchandise analysis. And if I ever have a curious question about quantities and cost, I go to inventory history. So hopefully, let's start the slideshow back again. Oh, not from the beginning. Sorry about that. Let's go here. So hopefully your takeaways are you at least know the difference between sales analysis and merchandise analysis, which gives you an idea of which report you want to run. Also how to save and recall parameters, And then we learned a little bit about auditing past values, current values, and how to figure out quantity and cost on an item, how it got to be that value. I really do appreciate your feedback. By Friday, you're going to get a link to the recording. And with that link is going to be a survey. It's just a happy face, sad face type of survey. So it won't take you but a few seconds to fill out or click on. And if you have any topic suggestions, go ahead and include them in the survey. Love to hear from you. If you want to fill out the survey today, why wait? www.cksystem.com/training bytes survey. Next month, June the 4th, this is a topic that's very near and dear to me lately because a lot of merchants are surcharging credit cards, and my experience shopping is they're all doing it wrong. Surcharges have a lot of pitfalls. And if you're talking to a salesperson who's selling you a new credit card machine, they don't tell you about those pitfalls. And they might program things in your credit card machine to automatically surcharge. Don't let them do it. We'll discuss that and the pitfalls. Also, a better solution is really offering cash discounts. There are literally no pitfalls for that. And something that's very, very interesting is surcharges, cash discounts. They're all regulated at the state level. So it's not like a federal thing where everyone's on the same page. It depends on the state. I know, for example, in my state, I live in Colorado, the limit for surcharging a credit card is 2%. And I've been into many establishments that are charging 3 and 4%. So that's going to cause them some trouble in the long run. So make sure you join me, June 4th, credit card and surcharges and cash discounts. If you want customized training tailored to your business, give me a call. Call the main number extension 3 or training at CK System. Don't put an S on the end. Training at cksystem.com. And Marty, let's check the Q&A. Did I lose you, Marty? You are muted. He might be on the phone.
Marty is gone.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I don't blame him.
Okay, so Betsy, yes, that was a view. That was a preview of what the new release of Counterpoint looks like, so you don't get it and freak out, right? And say, why is it all black and white? And know that we can change that. We can't make the buttons colorful like the current version, but we can put nice graphics on them.
Why?
That's a lousy choice.
I know, but you know,
really helps,
NCR doesn't bother to
kids
consult
quickly.
me for whatever reason. I don't
So I
know.
realize it.
Well, it's better than what they had originally proposed.
Oh my God, that was a nightmare.
It looked like someone had barfed purple all over the screen.
It was
Yeah.
horrible.
It's nice the way it is right now.
How horrendous would it be if we just stay put with what we've got for a
There's
while?
actually a pretty significant bug in the current splash screen, or they call it the launch pad.
Yeah.
And so they needed to move it away from there to fix that bug. So hopefully it was a rare bug, but when it hit you, it was pretty bad. So that's one of the reasons why they had to swap it out. So
Yeah.
Gina, we also had another question about save reports and getting that date field. I don't recall if you mentioned it about how to have the same date show
Yes,
up.
the dynamic dates.
The dynamic dates.
Rebecca, you don't want to do a current date unless you've posted. But if you do, let's say you've posted and you always want that report to default to today, one of the dynamic dates in the dropdown is today, and there's another one for yesterday.
Yeah.
And does that answer your question?
And we have people who will come in on Monday and they'll run reports that say last week, and they don't want to type in the dates for last week. They just choose last week and it works just fine.
Okay, Kathleen says, when do we need to upgrade to the latest Counterpoint?
Today.
Well, my
Today.
experience
That's a good
with
question.
software is you usually wait a while to get the bugs out, whether it's Windows or, Mac, Adobe. I never upgraded immediately because they always have bugs.
That's just the nature
The-
of software.
Yeah.
There is something new that NCR rolled out a couple of years ago. They will only support versions that are 2 versions behind the current.
Mhm.
So now the current is 8.6.3, which means only 8.6.2 and 8.6.1 are supported. So if you have 8.6.0 or 8.5.7 or 8, those are not supported anymore from NCR. From NCR.
Right.
I mean, we'll still
Well-
take care of you. But if we discover a bug in that older version, we can't turn it into NCR and they're not going to fix it.
And it may already
Yeah.
have been fixed.
Yeah, it may have been fixed in a new release, right?
Right.
This is true.
So what's the procedure to go to the latest? Contact you?
Talk to you. Oh, no. Yeah. No, not me. No.
Oh, okay.
Call your account manager. And for all of you, that's typically Kayla.
Right.
We're Dennis. It's typically Kayla.
Gotcha. I
Okay.
like the color.
I don't like change.
I know, but I tell you, when this version, when 8.5.7 came out, that was the first colorful version. I didn't like it because, it was different. It was change, and I just wanted to resist that. Well, now I like it. And now this came out so I really don't know. Is it that I don't like it or I just don't like the change?
Well, it's easy to grab what we need, knowing what color.
Well, we customize it so the more important ones have brighter colors and the lesser important ones are more muted. So you can go to the icons more quickly when you're busy. Instead of having them look exactly alike, which doesn't make sense. Speaking as a graphic designer.
Yeah, there you go. So
Yeah,
Rebecca says, is there a way to see what the difference is between 8.6.1 and 8.6.3? Sure. So you saw 8.6.3 today. And anything before that, up to 8.5.2. So a lot of the 8.5, 8.6 series. The icon looks like this, the squiggly little lines. I can't get to that. For some
Those-
reason,
Yeah,
my
but
shortcuts
help you
stopped
back.
working.
Those are some of the older users.
Oh,
Yep. So I'll just find my 8.6.0 install. So the older versions usually have this type of splash screen.
okay.
The sign-in is still going to be the same.
Yeah, I guess. That's what we have.
And so currently it's this nice colorful deal. If you want to know what version you're using, because there's a lot of variations with this main menu, if you right click way up here at the top, this is called your title bar, just right click and go to About Counterpoint and it'll tell you what version you're on. Okay, any other questions?
And I was just going to say, I typed it in there, ncrcounterpointhelp.com does have the release notes if you want to see what's in different versions. So, but one thing it doesn't say is bug fixes. Bug fixes aren't listed in there.
Correct.
Of course.
Just
I know, right?
The important stuff.
You.
Okay.
Many thanks.
Oh, you are welcome. Thank you for your time and come join me next month.
Phew,
will.
This year is flying by, Gina.
I know, I can't get over it.
Holy moly. Okay.
It is. Okay,
Very
everyone,
good.
thanks again. And look out for your link by Friday.
Thank you.